Now I've got to pay these people a ton of money to do something that I was doing myself. One of the key fundamental things, foundational things for a successful sales team is onboarding. Generally, if you've got what you might call a traditional salesperson, they tend to be less coachable. Here's a phone book, here's a laptop, off you pop. It's a big thing with founders is they tend to talk about what they do, not what the customer needs. It's not necessarily so much about what you're selling to someone, it's about the journey that person would go on. At the point you're measuring it, you can't do anything about it. The worst thing is, how many dials a day have you done? Be really ethical, but you've got to get me some revenue, otherwise you're going to lose your job.
Welcome to this episode of Harvest, sponsored by Sales Builder, the MSP quotation and proposal tool. This one is all about sales, and we need such help with this, don't we? How frustrating is it when we're so good at this technical service delivery side and many other elements of the business when it comes to sales, we struggle. Knowing when to find people, how to find people, what to look for, how to onboard them, how to set them up for success, all of these things that really are quite challenging if you're not from that background. So thankfully, we've got people like Lloyd, who has done nothing essentially but sales for his entire career, and that's all been in the technical sector, working for telecoms companies, multiple MSPs. One of those really was a sizable one, so looking forward to drawing on some of that experience. Alan's now a consultant as well, so working with independent MSPs, so loads of knowledge to draw upon. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It's very actionable, so you're going to want that pen and paper. I will catch up with you at the end. So welcome to Harvest, Alan Lloyd from Accelerate. Fantastic to have you on board. We always start these conversations with a misconception. So I'm going to put that to you straight away, Alan. What is there people get wrong about you when they first meet you?
Thanks for having me today, James. A pleasure being here. I think a big misconception that I've had throughout my career has been that I'm a very angry man. I got a nickname at one of the American vendors I worked out of Angry Alan. And,
okay, right.
So if the person who coined that nickname is watching this, they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. Everyone's like, "Oh, he's a really angry man." And I'm like, "I'm really not."
I certainly haven't got that from you so far, but yeah. I'll treat you carefully throughout the interview.
Maybe under pressure, who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Well, hopefully this isn't going to be too pressured, but I do really need you to help me out because basically you've got extensive experience in the sales background, obviously having worked for a sort of medium to large size MSP, now going on to do your own thing essentially as a sales consultant. And there's this problem that we see so often, and it's that you've got an owner of an MSP, normally with a technical background, but has done a fantastic job of sales. Has grown the business. It's going pretty well. They may have a member of a sales team perhaps in place, maybe not, but they know to scale they've got to bring somebody into the team. And there's often this kind of disconnect. I hear it so often. I made a mistake, James. I brought someone in. I didn't really have any sort of structure there or anything. So I know this is something you're well versed in. So where do you think it can go wrong? Where are the sort of the pitfalls in bringing someone in? What's the main problems people experience?
Good question. Yeah, many I think is probably the really short answer. Some of the things I've seen, and there's often to take a step back. In the question, you talked about, it's often tech founders who are sort of non-sales based founders who will set the business up.
Yeah, that's right.
Start off doing founder-led sales, and then look to transition into a more scaled approach. Now, I'm not saying this is everybody, but there's a healthy dislike of salespeople and sales in general. There's a lot of cynicism around sales as a profession. So that's a starting point. That's a really poor start, negative starting point to begin with.
Yeah, you think they see it as like a necessary evil almost. I think that's the thing, isn't it? You kind of slipped into it, and maybe
it's oh my God, how much do I have to pay these people just to do this job that I was doing myself whilst I was doing everything else? It was just a hat I had on. Now I've got to pay these people a ton of money to do something that I was doing myself. And it's that kind of hero status thing a little bit as well. But you couple that with not coming from a sales background, one of the key fundamental things, foundational things for a successful sales team is onboarding. And onboarding's part of a process and a strategy, and it starts with really understanding what you're looking for. So, if you can't articulate what you need in a salesperson, and for a non-salesperson, that's probably a real challenge. So, if you can't articulate what you're looking for from that role, how are you going to find out? How are you going to know what good looks like when it's sat in front of you?
Well, it's easy. It's just I want a replica of me.
Well, you don't, do you? Because you're not a salesperson.
I've been doing all right so far. I'm an owner.
it's that, and if that is the thought process, you're going to find it really difficult to find someone who ticks all the boxes that you think you need to tick.
Yes.
So, it starts off with that, putting some thought into scoping out what good looks like from your first hire, for any hire within a sales.
Is that like
sales
KPIs and things we're talking about there then, do you think? Is that a sort of like what you should be achieving, or any other elements to it?
No, I think it should start off with two really simple things. One is experience, and the other is coachability. If you look at the MSP marketplace today, especially at the that kind of 2 to 10 million turnover scale, they're complex businesses. They're often quite complex businesses and growing in complexity. Their service offerings are broad and realistically looking to broaden out consistently. So finding a salesperson who's got experience in all of the things that you might sell and all of the services that you provide to your customers is going to be a challenge. So the second thing you've got to have within the scope when you're looking for the right first hire is coachability. Because you find you find the best fit you can find in terms of background skills and experience, and then the rest comes through coaching.
That's got to be quite a hard thing to identify. I mean, it's a fantastic point. Do you have any tips there around, like, if you're looking for coachability, how do you tell? It's very difficult, isn't it? Obviously, interviews are just notoriously difficult anyway, but is there anything you can do there to identify either from their backgrounds or the conversations you have with them, or both? Or
I think certainly what I've seen is generally if you've got a what you might call a traditional salesperson, they tend to be less coachable.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So that's basically one of the things to look for then is to make sure that you're sort of prioritizing in the interview that they have got that sort of that sense of they're connected and potentially they're I won't say necessarily coachable there and then, but they're taking on what you're saying and stuff, I suppose. So okay,
it starts with emotional intelligence a little bit, I think, James.
Yeah, I guess that's what it comes down to, isn't it? Yeah.
And I'd also say, I'm biased on this. I'd also say it's not a factor of age either. Age or experience. You can get people at 30-year veteran salespeople and they're still eminently coachable.
That's interesting, actually, because I probably in the back of my mind I thought, maybe that's less likely to be the case, actually. So that's interesting you say that with your experience. So we've managed to, if we say, look, we're looking for this chameleon, we've got kind of an idea of who we're after, we've got a bit of an idea there of what to do in the sort of interview process. There's no doubt about it. A lot of this stuff falls down once the person's actually hired. So let's say we've got the right person.
Yeah.
How do we set them up for success? And it's not just there's the phone book, good luck.
Yeah.
I say that in jest, but I've heard that's kind of been the approach from many people I've spoken to, because it's sort of just, we've never done this before. It's unproven ground, so what any words of advice you've got there to make sure it doesn't fall flat on its face?
We say that in jest. I say that, it's my well-worn trope is here's a phone, it's changed my age. Here's a phone, here's a phone book, here's a laptop, off you pop. That's the typical sales onboarding. And I think, as with everything, you need to have a robust framework in place, and the framework does two things. One is it creates a process that you can go through that is repeatable, and it also means that it's scalable, and you can improve it as you go along. Some things will work for you, some things won't within the framework, and you adapt and you improve as you go along. And a framework, realistically, there's going to be 5 or 6 steps to it. And one of the big mistakes that I see, and this is not just, I'll level this at seasoned sales leaders as well as sort of MSP owners who have been doing founder-led sales and are looking to pivot. It's a bit counterintuitive, but it's the speeds to revenue becomes the obsession with salespeople. They're not viewed as this kind of like magic bullet for everything. But you hire someone and you go, right, the clock's ticking, I'm paying you. When are you hitting your target? And it's that kind of like, right, well, you've got your, it's unsaid, you've got your laptop, you've got your tools, off you go. You've got a target from month 2.
Yeah. So how do you get away from that then? Because that seems quite, it's logical, isn't it? That you're an overhead.
It's logical, but I think that's the bit that needs reframing, because you'll get better, more consistent results over a longer period of time with an individual salesperson if you onboard them in a really robust way. That starts with pre-onboarding, and it's communicate with people. Let them know what's expected of them from day one. What's the first day going to look like? What's the first week going to look like? What should you expect from this new role? So
okay, so I'm a complete newbie then, Alan. I'm a total newbie to this. So like, I want to do this right. I've sent out my mug, and what exactly do I need to be? What exactly do I need to be sort of saying on the sort? Because I don't really know what the first day should look like, or the subsequent days. What would you suggest?
Well, so realistically, the first week should be orientation and foundations. That type of activity. So making sure the hire understands who key people are within an organisation. So introduce them, whether that's over Teams or Zoom or online or face to face. Make sure that they get some time with senior leadership across all functions, so that those individuals can then introduce their department and functions, and ways of working to that individual.
Yeah.
Overview the sales organisation. Now, you'll have talked about the sales organisation during the interview process, and if the sales organisation is just that person, realistically there should be some function and form around them, not just, it keeps coming back to that. You're just a salesperson. Here's a laptop. Off you go.
You mean like the interaction with marketing, or the role compared to like inside sales, or that kind of thing?
I think as a sales organisation, even if you're the first hire, the person who's leading the business should have a vision for what the sales organisation, how the sales organisation is going to function, in terms of it's some of the soft stuff like the ethical approach and the how you present yourself to customers. And what's important to the business, it's like, I hate to say it, is it a business that's just about the numbers? There are organisations that exist that don't care about retention. They just have a new business funnel, and they just go like, you're just out there, get the customers through the door, and they tend to be the slightly toxic sales organisations, because it's just bang, 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 performance, performance, performance. Don't care what you tell them. Don't care. No one's going to say this out loud, but it kind of bleeds out of people. This kind
Yeah.
of approach and attitude towards others will bleed out of it. So if that's, if you're not communicating a specific vision and values, that might be something that's a slightly uncomfortable jacket for you to wear. They're gonna see your values, because you're not hiding them. So if you want to create something that has a value and that stands on its own, you have to communicate. You have to know what they are first, and then you have to communicate them to the salespeople.
I think that's particularly important in our industry as well. I mean, what we're talking about here is bringing on customers who could be with us for 5, potentially 10 years. So it's definitely a longer term game, isn't it? So that's a really, really important piece. Okay, cool. So we've got the values across then, and then what are you thinking in terms of sort of the next steps? Is there a point at which you sort of start to talk about, how we're going to approach going to market and what's expected of people?
Yeah, really. I mean, the week one is it's all about that kind of just getting you sat at your desk and understanding what the job's about. Giving people, if they've got tools, make sure they understand how to log into them. What the tools are, if there's KPIs around using the tools, communicate those, and moving on from that. Sort of the next couple of weeks, really 2 to 3 weeks, you should start getting them to if you've got a sales organisation, there's some of this you can't do as a first hire, but it should be in your framework. So this is where you'd put salespeople and start them shadowing other salespeople who show the right
If you
right
can,
behaviours.
yeah, or the owner, I guess, in that
Or
case.
the owner, like, so if the owners, and that could be an interesting exercise, because you'll be what I think I do and what I actually do. So there's always going to be a slight gap between how I think how I want to portray myself and how I actually come across. But you'll get you'll really start to absorb how the company's presented, and you'll pick up on what good isn't. That's good English. Because there'll be bad habits. If it's founder led sales, there's definitely going to be some bad habits. So you can start to, hopefully as a seasoned sales professional, you can start to pick up the bits where it's the nuanced use of language in the wrong way. So you just there's too much negativity coming through, or it's you're not problem oriented enough. So it's a big thing with founders is they tend to talk about what they do, not what the customer needs.
Just from a point of passion about the business, having been there from day dot and lived it and breathed it.
It's a point of passion. It's also, I think, something that's almost trained into us subliminally, right from as soon as you get into the corporate world. If you're presenting your business, you're doing it the wrong way around. And you right at the end, when everybody's got really bored, you then start talking about, right, what are we here to solve? What's the problem solving we're here to do?
It's such a common mistake, isn't it? Yeah.
And you need to turn it on its head. You start with what's in it. I kind of coached salespeople with, it must really irritate people. Is it like you use two things? It's two things. Is the first one, so what? You literally just sit in front of people going, so what? So what? They're like, oh, we do this. So what? And it takes them so many times. It's often 5, 6, 7 steps before they start realising that there's some value to what you're talking about to the customer. You start to turn it on its head a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a perpetual topic of conversation actually at the moment. Is that sort of particularly when you're going in and you're sort of proposing maybe your solution to a customer, or even in QBRs, it's that sort of, how do you make sure that the information is sort of flowing the right way and you're actually listening to what the customer's saying and recommending from there rather than going in with your menu.
It's not necessarily so much about what you're selling to someone; it's about the journey that person would go on. It's what are they where are they trying to get to? What does good look like? And what's their experience going to be as they travel with you on that journey to get to there? And then where are they now? So again, you're kind of looking at it a bit back to front. You're going, right, we know where the destination is. It's like booking a holiday. You know where you're going, and you kind of work back from there, don't you? You kind of go, right, how are we getting there? What time do we have to, all those kind of steps. So if you're walking a customer through, so there's robust customer onboarding. They understand that journey through to, right, we're now a customer, and then what does that look like? What happens month 1, month 3, end of year 1, on each anniversary, what do you do throughout the life cycle of that customer? And that's what you're selling them, not the service to, for whatever you're providing them. It's that outcome.
It's so easy to slip into that, isn't it? And I don't think as vendors we necessarily help that either, because we're constantly telling the MSPs how great this particular product is for this specification reason and what the latest technology is in this threat detection tech or whatever. And you're just like, okay, hang on a minute. That you need to listen to that and then completely disconnect from it and then think completely differently when you're talking to the customer. Yeah, you've got to try and sort of break that cycle.
Are you tired of wasting time on basic proposal tools? Sales Builder goes beyond PDFs, automating your entire sales process to win more deals and boost profits. Do you want to have a look at how it works? First off, we provide you with the foundation of a nice, simple, centralized view of your company's contacts and all of the useful related data points, and that's automatically synchronized with your PSA. The most efficient MSPs are ruthless about only selling a standardized portfolio. Connect to your distributors for your hardware details and availability too, your PSA to pull in your managed services, and then clear out all of that noise and distraction of ad hoc products and services you've been selling over the years. Define a tight portfolio with service bundles, set your margins, specify standard up and cross-sell items, and make sure that everyone is doing the same thing right across the business. Once you're clear on exactly what you want to be selling, it's time to work out who you can sell it to. Our white space analysis module helps your sales teams get laser focused. Spot the upcoming contract renewals, anything you're underbilling, visualize the service gaps, and focus on the most profitable account growth opportunities. So you know what you're selling, you know who you're selling to, it's time to send a proposal. Get beautiful, error-free, standardized and interactive quotes sent out without all that copying and pasting from supplier portals, adjusting templates, editing product information, all that stuff that just hemorrhages time and profits. With drag and drop content blocks and templates, you can make sure your document really resonates with your customers' needs or even their vertical, but in a way that's fast to produce because it's standardized. Plus, of course, customers can edit quantities and options there on the fly. They can e-sign, and you can see all of this going on right from within Sales Builder. Start your free trial today and see how much you could be missing. We have got a great team of real people with lots of experience here, so let's chat and see how Sales Builder can help you take your MSP to that next level.
So just coming back to the onboarding then. So we talked about sort of the cultural fit in the first few days and things. I'm quite interested to talk about, okay, right, let's how do we set them up for success in terms of letting them know what we expect from them in terms of, it could be like, is it active? Do you recommend activity based? You talked about, not getting too fixated on time to revenue, which will be very difficult for some people.
Yep.
What do you suggest around the whole, I guess we're talking about activities and potentially even commissions as well, like what they could potentially return?
Yeah, I think the activity is an interesting one, because it's, this is all down to what do we measure. In sales, there's 100 different metrics you could measure. The one that most people measure is output, which that's the whole business is kind of planned around some sales numbers, achieving some sales targets. So you have to measure the output. There's no two ways about it. But it's not. It's almost the last thing you should measure.
Interesting.
Because there's nothing you can do about it. At the point you're measuring it, you can't do anything about it. So you get to the end of the month, end of quarter, end of year, and you measure someone and they're X% of target, whether it's if they've had a cracking year and knocked it out of the park, or they've had a terrible year and they haven't, but they've still got their job. And you measure their output and you go, what do you do with that information? Where's the value in measuring something you already know effectively? So you've got to be right from the outset, I think, set expectations about what things matter from a measurement and a metric and a measurement perspective. My view very much is it has to have value. So it's not just activity based. So you're not, the worst thing is how many dials a day have you done? Because it's not a straight line correlation between number of dials and ultimate outcome revenue.
Does that have a place, Alan? I'm interested on this one because part of me feels like that's the first thing I'd like to see in my sales team. I don't know if it's dials or whatever, but that sort of sign of activity.
It's an outcome. It's not about activity per se. It's about effective activity. So if you go through, you go, right, how many dials have I done? Let's say I've done 100. How many meetings have I booked? I booked 3. Let's say. So what so far? So what? What's the value of any of that to the business? Do you use the sniff test of so what? It doesn't mean anything. You've got 3 meetings. Nice. What happens in those meetings? Somebody, you qualify in, are we a good fit for the customer? Is the customer a good fit for us? Hopefully you've done some of that in the targeting of your ideal customer. You then start to use something like like Medic or BANT, and you go like, is there a project there? Is there budget there? Is this real? Is it a real opportunity that we can win? Now, then at that point, what I was doing is asking the salespeople to use their experience to put some notional value on that. So you're talking about you're talking about a UC deployment for 100 people. You should have an idea in your head. Oh, it's going to be about this much for the licenses, this much professional services, this much as an ongoing support cost. So as a sales professional, you should go, okay, that's a 10k opportunity profit. Now from your metrics within the business how long it takes, how long that sales cycle is, how good this individual is at closing, because you'll have those metrics within. Well, hopefully you'll have those metrics within, hopefully a CRM, if not, a spreadsheet or somewhere. You'd be measuring them, and if you're not, you should be.
Yeah, I think it must be a given that you've got to have a CRM if you're going to bring on a salesperson, right? I mean, I think you're pretty much asking for trouble otherwise.
You look on the sales CVs looking for someone who's like, oh, well, my passion is admin.
Yes, yeah.
That's not a skill you're hiring for, is it?
Not at all.
But it's important because the data that's in CRM is important for you as a business, because it allows you to engage in the right way with customers, now and on an ongoing basis. So, you can get those metrics out of CRM. Hopefully, that will give you, and you then reverse engineer. And you go, right, okay, well, you as an individual, not this. One of the things that I do hate is this received wisdom within sales, and it's not just sales, and things like it's closing ratios 3-1.
Right. Yeah.
Like almost everybody will tell you that. Because it's one of those things, you put no thought into it. You go, oh, it's about 3-1. And it very rarely is.
Also, you could do so little with that because it's kind of like there's so many variables within that that could affect it that you can't replicate that exactly. It's not something I can take to another business because it could be the lead source, it could be the type of company, it could be the service you're going in there with, it could be so many different things there that could affect that. You're talking about analysing where it's gone wrong, if it has gone wrong, and it not being worthwhile looking at the end number because it's too late. So what's the minimum number of things we can look at in order to get to the point where it's useful?
I think setting a clear, an expectation, setting some clear boundaries around what your expectation for pipeline cover would be. The first 90 days is about building pipeline.
Yes. Okay.
If you're driving people to revenue, and you're just focus on revenue, you're going to drive the wrong behaviour in a salesperson because they'll get desperate. They'll be I need to close something. I need to get some numbers on the board. So they start doing things that either aren't not necessarily aren't ethical, but they'll be pushing the boundaries of the behaviours that you would expect for them, that you might have had within your foundational onboarding framework. Because you're going like be really ethical, but you've got to get me some revenue, otherwise you're going to lose your job. That's really two contradictory things there that are quite emotional, strong emotional pulls. So
definitely
focusing in the first 90 days on pipeline, and I would argue that on an ongoing basis, it's pipeline you focus on, because if I have a conversation with you about underperformance against communicated metrics around pipeline generation, you can do something about that. You can take action.
That's pipeline is basically like sort of anyone that's expressed an interest, essentially. So it could be an initial kind of like.
Well, no, it should be quantifiable. So you should have
qualified.
It should be a project that's got a budget against it. You've got some scope around it. You've got to that stage where you understand those basic metrics. So you can put it into a CRM platform or whatever you use to manage your sales pipeline, and put a value and a time frame against it.
Excellent. Okay, something's got a value. Yeah. Okay, that makes total sense to me.
So if that's your focus and you're going, okay, I don't know, your target's 20k a month, whatever it is. And you could arbitrarily start off on first hire, say, well, let's go with 3 times, or let's play it safe and go 5 times. That's what you're driving towards. Now, whenever I come and sit down with you and go, right, how's your pipeline looking? We can talk about, right, you've got that level of pipeline from what you know is the level of activity you're doing. I don't have to worry about the level of activity you're doing. You know what it is. I need you to be here. You're here. I need you to be here. So you adjust these inputs yourself. So I'm no longer coming at you going, how many dials have you done today? Because it's micromanagement. It's policing the wrong things. And we all know, salespeople, I'll probably be bold enough to say I've done it myself at some point, you'll game it. You set people some easy gameable metrics, they'll game them. Yeah. So all you do is you get a fake outcome based on measuring the wrong thing.
Yeah, of course, and that's no use at all, is it? So it's really just as you say, it's setting the expectations from the very beginning, isn't it? And making sure that you don't end up in that position where it is, it is rushed, and you are trying to sort of suddenly try and manipulate that end number.
From a founder's perspective, is please, for God's sake, do a sensitivity analysis on a salesperson's performance. If you do your first hire, you're spending £10,000+ on recruitment fees, probably, unless you're really lucky and you know someone. You're then onboarding them and paying them. You might have, let's say, worst case, 90 days to revenue. You might pick up some stuff that you hand over to them that you've had nurtured, whilst you've been doing it yourself. What does that look? If what everyone will always sit there and say, what does good look like? But then what happens if it's bad, and what happens if it's fantastic? Because overperformance could create problems down the line for you. Because it could be a resourcing thing somewhere else in the business. So if your salesperson's coming in here, what does them performing to this level look like, and what does them performing and what's the impact of those two things? So you're already thinking ahead. We're in a there's a margin for error here, as opposed to it just being a straight line to a number. As a founder for a first sales hire, I would challenge that would take some of the stress out of making that decision and making that step to take that resource on board.
Yeah, that's great advice. In terms of what bad looks like, I mean, we always hear this old adage of, hire fast, fire faster. When do you know you're on a hiding to nothing? What are the signs to look for, and what sort of time frame would you say for this sort of, the type of company we're talking about here, medium-sized MSPs?
I think a really good question, and I don't think there's one answer to this. I think what good looks like for somebody who's a new hire and what good looks like for somebody who's established within the business will be different. I think the new hire, you've got to give people a runway. If you've got a robust hiring process and you've scoped the role and you're realistic about what you're looking for, and you're looking for the people with the right skills and coachability, then a lot of that gets done before the hire stage. You're always going to get some mistakes coming through. Hiring salespeople is difficult. One thing salespeople are generally good at is interviews, no matter how good they are at sales. So you've got to set a target in your mind as to where that cutoff is. Where, say, I don't know, where do you want them to be in 6 months? Where do you want them to be in 9 months? And again, it's a sensitivity analysis, and you've got to accept. I personally, I think within the first 6 months, if they're genuinely not the right person, you'll know. If it's then they're the right person, but they're just not quite getting to the levels that you can see some performance and you can see some progress, but not to where you wanted it to be. Is it within that sensitivity funnel? If it's not, you've got a difficult decision to make, because you're then repeating expense. You're going to get another hire come in. Depends what the terms are with the recruitment business as to whether they're, at what point they keep their fees effectively. And sometimes that'll colour it. Sometimes that'll set the level at where you say it's a go, no go. Now that's a whole different ballgame to somebody who's in the business and you're potentially dealing with sales complacency, or you're dealing with a lack of consistency in activity, where you get this boom and bust in salespeople. And if you look at somebody when they're at that, they turned off their business development because they're smashing their numbers, and then 6 months later they're down, couldn't be any worse. If you take a snapshot view of them at that point, do you get rid of them? Or do you coach your way out of it?
Yeah, what do you do there? What is the answer there? Because there'll be plenty of people that are suffering with that. I'd say. I mean, that's goes with the territory, doesn't it?
Well, I would suggest if you're managing to the OKR in terms of business pipeline development, you'll see that coming. You'll see that 6 months in advance before it becomes the outcome. So you then manage to that, not to the. So you shouldn't then get this boom and bust behaviour, because that's salespeople decide to do that subconsciously, because it's that kind of like, I'm the man, oh God, everything's terrible. I'm the man, oh God, everything's terrible. And it's lack of consistency in activity. So if you're measuring it at the right time, you'll manage that at the front end and stop people going into those, into the downsides. And
that's brilliant. I think that's going to be a
consistent outcome.
That's brilliant. I think that's going to be really helpful for a lot of MSP owners, just having that concept, just not focusing on the end number, bringing people on right, making sure they're introduced correctly, setting out your stall, monitoring the right things. I think we've covered some awesome material there. Thank you, Alan. Really appreciate that. We are going to dive into our segment, if you don't mind. The first one is called Industry Manure. This is your opportunity to dispel any advice that you hear banded around that you just think, no, that is a crock of shit. I don't agree with that at all. Don't go along with that.
You can put anyone in a sales role, because it's that misunderstanding of what's actually involved in it. People have that kind of like, oh, sales is it's brash extrovert people who would just spend my missus used to think about it. Me, it's like, all you do is go and chat to people and take them out for lunch. Now that might have been true at the time, but there's a lot more. It's like that busy behind the scenes thing, isn't it? So it's those misconceptions. I think that it's an easy job, but anyone can do it, and it's about talking too much and not listening to the customer. I see salespeople should be problem solvers. They should be curious problem solvers. They should look for problems and talk to people about not directly about what's your problem, but talk to them about what their day looks like, what their job looks like, and spot the problems and start to think about how you would help them solve it. And it's not just about going, oh, I've got a box for that, or I've got a service for that. You've got to think a little bit laterally around what pains your customer to try and help them problem solve, and a lot of that will come from understanding their priorities. Genuinely understanding their priorities and how it impacts them as a person. But yeah, I had a terrible experience with a vendor who shall remain nameless, where I was being not coached. Almost, it felt like I was being. The lady was trying to tutor me as to how we should engage a customer around sales. And I think it was about 18 months prior to that, she'd been her previous role was as a barista in a coffee shop. Now that's no shade on being a barista, but it's people they go like, we get someone, they're cheap, they can do that job. You just got to go and talk to the customer, and then you get no coaching. So there's a lot around sales that I really dislike. I think the number one thing is that kind of like, oh, you're all just slick extrovert people who like talking and going for lunch. Not true.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think you only have to put somebody into a sales role to really have them understand exactly what's involved, and the sort of there's so much more in honing the skills. It's the soft skills, the people relationship side is just one part of it, obviously. And it's such a difficult thing as well now, isn't it? Because I mean, there's obviously so many people have got the information online, and they're kind of they come into you at a much different stage than ever before. So sales is really
everyone's an expert nowadays, isn't they?
Yeah, I think that's it. So our next segment, Alan, is Pass the Pitchfork. Now, this is a question from our previous guest. In this case, it was Jennifer Bleem, sales Sherpa over there in the US, and she was saying that Dato's research, who I look to occasionally, and she certainly trusts, all about the industry, shows that businesses are lacking MSP support, and yet still there's so many MSPs that are struggling to grow. Do you have any thoughts around why that might be? Where is that disparity happening?
Start with marketing. If you boil it down, marketing's about understanding who the right businesses are for you to sell to, and getting in front of them. So, if and there's a good fit for everybody. So whoever the end user is, who's struggling to find an MSP that fits what they need, it's because that MSP is not marketing themselves properly. Now, it could be that the customer's got a mismatch in terms, they sit outside. I don't know. You tend to get these things when it's possibly lazy, a bit of lazy marketing, where you go, who's our ICP? And you go, oh, everybody that's got two legs, and I don't know, they're within a postcode area, and they've got 200 people.
Yeah, not so refined.
That's everybody. It's like it's lazy and quick, because you go, we've got to have an ICP, so let's go. Companies with 50 to 200 people. So if that dilutes how you're getting in front of people, and therefore, and people might sit outside of that target market, and if the predominant behaviour is that lazy approach to identifying the target market, you'll have a whole tranche of businesses that just don't fit it, so they'll never get marketed to. So I think genuinely understanding where you want to fit, and why, understanding why that's your ideal customer profile, and then I think you've got a better chance of getting in front of the right people. But the right people have got a better chance of you getting in front of them as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think that's so important that everyone's sort of your target, your niche necessarily, or your niche if you're listening in the US, and kind of making sure that you're running the right activities to get in front of them would definitely. If you're not, I mean, let's be honest, marketing and sales is definitely not an area where a lot of MSPs feel that that's their strength, and it's normally something to sort of grow into. And I think that all sort of ties into it, doesn't it? Alan, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. I think we've got loads of value from this, plenty of actionable stuff in there, which is what we like on this show. It's your turn to do a yell from the barn. So let us know, where would you like some eyeballs on? What are you up to at the moment? And tell us a bit about what your business.
So I've recently set up Accelerate Consulting. My sort of raison d'etre is to try and address a lot of what we've spoken about today.
Okay, so it was at this point that I heard, it's all gone black, and we had a technical issue. So what I've asked Alan to do, seeing as I can't possibly let him give us all that value and then not let him talk about what it is he's doing currently, is record this after the fact. So Alan's made me a short video to let you guys know what it is he does specifically.
Yeah, it was ironic, wasn't it? We had technical issues coming from a technical industry. Yeah, hi, my name's Alan. I run the Accelerate Founder Sales Coaching Program. It consists of a 13-week program, one-on-one sessions weekly, online, with a lot of support over WhatsApp, lots of tools, recognised frameworks and methodologies. Had some great results with clients so far, got some fantastic testimonials on my LinkedIn profile. Looking to work with people to professionalise their sales environment and help founders from a non-sales background to be comfortable with selling and drive their businesses forwards, hopefully so they get to the point where they can expand enough to bring in their first sales hire.
Well, that was great, wasn't it? Alan Lloyd, hopefully a fresh face to you, many of the people in the industry. So I'm really happy that you came on Harvest First. That's really cool. There were some standout takeaways, lots of actionable stuff in there, as I promised you, but there were some really good bits in there that I wanted to recap for you. So in terms of the actionable items, I like that bit about, the first 90 days. So it's all about building pipeline, thinking about that maybe instead of pushing for those sort of quick revenue wins, which is tempting, when these people don't come cheap, so there's an investment there and you want to see it pay off. But the importance of building that sustainable success through pipeline and giving the space to maneuver. Also on actually looking at potentially moving away from counting those dials or focusing on those monthly revenue numbers only. So tracking that pipeline and then really making sure you've got the actual value attached. Now this is something that we're all guilty of not recording that, but really thinking that through makes such a difference in terms of understanding, what is the value to the business if this was to close, and you're in a much better place if you've got that. And then the other thing that really stood out for me, I like that bit where he talks about the sensitivity analysis, I think he called it. So that basically you just know, what can I tolerate? What does good look like? But also, what do I need? What does this person need to bring in for this to work? And so that gives you a much better place. It tells you what your margin for error is. And obviously you factor in all the other things, sort of where you source that person from, the sort of the costs involved in bringing them. So I thought it was an excellent episode. I hope you enjoyed it too. Don't forget to tune in for the next one. This is actually the last one going out before Christmas. So however you celebrate the festive period, or if you're just having a holiday, I hope you make the most of it, and we'll see you again in the new year. Thanks for being part of Harvest. Thanks for listening. It means a lot. Take care. Bye for now. That is it for this episode of Harvest. If you found this useful, all the links we mentioned are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review and share it with a friend, or even better, someone else in the industry who you know would get value from it. Until next time, happy harvesting.